Happy New Year, hockey fans. This is episode 112 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke, and as always, joined by Sean. Sean, Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year to you, too. Happy New Year to all our loyal listeners.
Yeah, and all the hype we had last episode was kind of squashed, I guess. It's like it's kind of gone.
Cut out at the knees.
Yeah. So, between lots of postponements and, sadly the World Junior Championship getting canceled, postponed, maybe.
Hopefully postponed.
Definitely disheartening. Kind of a lot of weird news coming out of that tournament, just like teams criticizing the way that the tournament was being put on and the protocols, and just seems like they didn't really have a plan in place for what would happen if there was positive tests. Like there was like two, I think it was like as few as two players on a team, and it was like, they had to forfeit. So
what ultimately sounds like happened is that the way that the protocol was written, if a person tested positive, then everyone who was in contact with that person also had to isolate. Now, this is a hockey team. They're in closed-in locker rooms, in hotel rooms, in restaurants, in practice areas. So that's going to be the whole team. So one person tests positive on the team, and suddenly the whole team's got to go into quarantine. Yeah, that's not going to work. I think it was the Finnish coach. It was either the Finnish coach or I think it's Slovakian goalie Simon Lakotsky, who was talking about, like, they're not in a bubble. The players were in, like, a public hotel. There's the general public running around unmasked in the hotel. They're having a wedding reception in the hotel in Red Deer. So one person's absolutely going to get sick or going to pick up COVID somewhere. And then suddenly the whole team's got to go in isolation and take the whole tournament out, basically. So the whole way it was set up for this year's tournament was just very, very poorly thought out. And it's really sucks because it's now wasted a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of time for all of these players, all their teams, all their families, like all the hockey federations in the different countries. It's just a real bad look for the IIHF on that one.
Yeah, and there was some other people that were saying like they actually like bumped into like the people who were at the wedding and stuff. Like it's just like, how do you not have like a controlled hotel environment for the players? It's just such a it is a joke. Like that is a joke.
Like last year they had the hotel to themselves, I'm pretty sure. Like they had rented out the entire thing for the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't they do that again?
Yeah, and like he was saying, like, he feels like he's at like a minor hockey tournament, not like, a world best on best. Like,
I mean, the way it's being written, absolutely. When you just go to a random city, like for a 2-hour road trip on the weekend to play a random tournament, like, kind of feels like that.
Yeah, he's like, the organization from the first day was terrible. I felt like I'm participating at some basic youth hockey tournament. It's like
not the premier junior tournament.
No, yeah, it's like you'd expect, like an entire hotel. Just that's where people stay.
Especially when they're trying to keep the integrity of the tournament running. Like someone has to have been able to see this coming. Where
if your protocol. If your protocol is basically if there's any positive test, everyone is done, you'd think that they would take every step possible to prevent one positive test, and having them exposed to just random people at a hotel isn't doing that. So it's really, the criticism seems like it's well placed. Like it seems like there is definitely a cause for concern in just how, I don't know, lackadaisical they ran that thing. Like it's just So I don't know. It's pretty bizarro, and hopefully, it's just super disappointing that they had to cancel it, and hopefully they can, reschedule it. I've seen some cool ideas being thrown around about like hosting it in summer and like allowing the players who would maybe be overaged by that point still playing in it, having the same
basically
rosters.
To say, you were eligible, have the same roster. It's like, you made the team before, you're welcome back again, even though you might be a few months over age now.
Yeah, like I think it was like Ray Ferraro was talking about, like, for a lot of these kids, like, this is the pinnacle of their career. Like, they might not even have a full, pro hockey career, and so just being able to have this is huge.
And I think Hockey Canada made a statement like, yeah, we'd be willing to, help host or whatever again if they reschedule for the spring or the summer.
Yeah, but something,
like, the interest is there, and you really hope that they can find a week to finish it up.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to piggyback off this conversation a little bit to talk about what Brad Marchand said about the NHL in regards to the Olympics. So he went on Twitter, and this is during the tournament, when the league was, during the IIHF tournament, the league was postponing a bunch of games, and they were amending their protocols and stuff, and they were adding like things like a taxi squad back into the league. So Brad Marchand said, the NHL and the NHLPA can change the rules of the CBA to add a taxi squad so that they don't miss any games and don't lose any money, which has already been agreed upon that the players will pay back in escrow until the owners are made whole from what they have lost during this pandemic, regardless of how many games are missed. Yet they can't do a taxi squad during the Olympics, so they can honor the agreement they made so the NHL players can go. Please tell me that's not bullshit. And for all of you who want to pipe back about forfeiting pay while being gone, yeah, not a problem. Let the players make their choice. So ultimately, I think that, like, if you're going to do one thing with certain logic, you're able to get criticized for not doing this on the same logic. So I like that he was vocal about this. It just shows that the players want to go to the Olympics. There's some players that still want to go. Obviously, Brad Marchand wants to go, or at least have the option of making that decision for himself. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to see what you thought about that statement.
I think it's great that someone spoke out. Ultimately, like, we don't see this from hockey players very often, and Brad Marchand put out it's a very rational, level-headed response to it. This isn't like someone just whining and whinging about stuff. It's clear, it's concise, it makes sense, and it points out a bit of a flaw in logic where the owners are holding the players to one thing with their escrow payments, but the players can't hold the owners to being promised to going to the Olympics. Situationally, the league needs the time for the schedules to make up the lost games, but it comes down to let the players make their choice. Because some players aren't going to want to go. They aren't going to feel safe. They don't want to risk it. But we've seen a lot of other players are like, this is my last chance. This is something I wanted to do, and I haven't gotten the chance to. Like, they might not get another shot if they happen to go in 2026, whenever.
Yeah, and there's a lot of players that won't be able to go after this, and then it's like the NHL is really holding on to their deadline of the season end, and because of all the postponements, that's why they're not allowing players to go to the Olympics. It's money, and them deciding to be hard line on when they want the season to end. But we just played through summer.
Yeah,
last season.
Literally just started a season or restarted a season in August and September and played into mid-July or whatever last season.
Yeah, it's very arbitrary when the season starts and stops. It doesn't make that much of an impact. Sure, it'd be nice to get into a regular, stop-start, but nothing is regular now. Players are testing every day. That wasn't a thing before. So it's very, it's very positive, I think, to see players criticize the league because they need criticism. And it's nice to know the players aren't just all accepting what the league does at face value. They're seeing through the lines, and they're, even the postponements, in Canada recently, where it's really bizarro, where the Leafs and Ottawa played, I think, a couple days ago in an empty arena, right? And then there's a bunch of games this week where the Leafs are supposed to be playing at home that they've postponed. And it's like, okay, so why? Like, why is that one game okay, but these other ones aren't? I think they're cross-border games where U.S. teams would be coming up, but it's like, no, it's money. Then they've said that they want to reschedule them for when the Leafs can make ticket revenue on that game.
Yeah, it's the same thing that they're doing with pretty much all the Canadian teams that have capacity restrictions on the arenas, where they're postponing and rescheduling, and they're going to use that 3 weeks in February to try and make up those games when hopefully there's back to higher capacity. And like you said, It's all down to money.
And it's like, sure, yeah, whatever, but at the end of the day, if you are the one deciding we want to stick to our hard stop, you're making that an issue yourself by postponing the games for when we can have tickets. And maybe we won't be able to sell tickets for those games, and you'll have to schedule them in anyway.
Exactly.
Like, why not just keep the schedule how it is? I don't know. It's weird. It's very bizarre. I know that they want to make money, and there's a lot of money involved, but and it's in the CBA that the players have this escrow thing and everything, but it's like, I don't know. It's just the players want to go.
It's hard to wrap our minds around all the different like decisions being made and trying to see like past some double standards.
Yeah, and as a fan of Olympic hockey, I don't want to see amateur people representing Canada. I want to see Connor McDavid play with Sidney Crosby. I want to see Ovechkin playing for Russia. I want to see all the players that I love watching in the NHL play in the Olympics. To have a true best on best, because I wanted to see China get absolutely butt slammed by an absolutely gross Team Canada, Team USA. I wanted to see that. They're still going to lose, but what, we'll never get that what if. Like, what if Canada sent? It'll be like one of those NHL commercials, like, what if blah 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 never scored that goal? It'll be like, what if Canada sent Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby? How badly would China have lost? Anyway,
this entire thing is just a conspiracy from China to get NHL players out so they don't lose as bad in hockey.
Yeah, I got to save face. I mean, honestly, what China's capable of a lot of crazy shit, and as we speak, they've got Canadians locked up for no reason because Canada's done something else. So, I wouldn't put it past them, but I put the tinfoil hat away for now.
Our podcast is now banned in China.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just nice to see players standing up for something that they're passionate about. And
for someone like Brad Marchand and his stature in the league, being one of the premier players, it's great for him to stand up for this and kind of take the voice of some of the lower tier players or less prominent NHLers to come out and say something like this for himself, because he's going to put the heat on his back, whereas someone else might not be able to, if it might come into play where like, oh, you're too vocal, you're a problem, so they just end up kind of getting pushed out of the league. Can't do that to Brad.
Yeah, and I think like the last part of his statement here is like, for all of you who want to pipe back about forfeiting pay while being gone, not a problem. Let the players make their choice. It's like, like, it's not about the money for playing for Team Canada. It's about Team Canada. Yeah. That's what you dream of. So, all the players, you think of like all of the crazy line combinations we've had, and like for Team Canada, where you've got teams with like Mario Lemieux and like Joe Sakic and Yzerman and like all these Joe Thornton, like all these gross combinations. It's like we're getting robbed of that right now. And
just imagine Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan McKinnon rolling out as a top line for a bit.
That's fucked.
Like, oh my god, like that would just be insane to see on the ice.
Yeah, that's pretty gross. So anyway, I guess moving on, like speaking of Connor McDavid, You wanted to talk about the Oilers as you're wearing an Oilers jersey right now.
Yeah.
You haven't thrown it yet. I presume.
I might. I'll toss it over the TV by the time we're done recording.
Yeah.
But yeah, so over the weekend, this started to get extremely scary, seeing Mike Babcock trending on Twitter. Go to see why he's trending on Twitter, hoping it's not him abusing players again. And find out that there's some low-level rumors that the Oilers are about to make a coaching change, and they're talking to Mike Babcock about taking that spot. Far too many people are talking about that for my comfort, even though Elliot Friedman and Ken Holland himself have said there's no contact there. But unfortunately, the connection there exists between Oilers general manager Ken Holland and Mike Babcock. That, you know, the whole nepotism thing that goes on, old boys club in hockey. Babcock's got to be the first on Holland's list when and if Dave Tippett gets fired. And the way the Oilers are playing right now, having gone an absolute nosedive down the standings, looking awful most games, giving up a goal in the first 5 minutes every other game, can't score the first goal ever. Coach is going to get looked at pretty strongly in these situations when the team's supposed to be way better.
Yeah, so a couple things. Like, the Oilers are playing the Rangers right now. They're currently halfway through the second, and they're down by 2. And during this game, a stat came up during the game, and it said the Oilers are this season 0-11-2 when trailing after the first. Like, that's a stat you'd expect from like the Canucks before Travis Green got fired. Like, not a team that was in that started the season with like a 8-game winning streak or whatever they had.
I mean,
and
as of a month ago, basically right now, the Oilers were first in the league in points percentage. And then they've started an absolute nosedive through December. The only 2 games they've won since then have been when Glenn Gulletson was coaching because Tippett was on COVID protocol. So Tippett hasn't actually won a game in like a month, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's not a good look when your head coach is out and your team does better. It's so anyway, that first period stat has got to change. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Trailing after the first, you lose every single time.
Well,
you've gotten 2 points out of 13
games. The Oilers
games.
are currently second last in the league in scoring the first goal. I think Seattle is the only team that gives up the first goal more often than Edmonton. And, it's like you get to a point where you might as well just give the other team a 1-0 lead at puck drop because it's going to just happen right away anyways. And this is an issue that's been going on for years with the Oilers, where it's like every other year there's a joke about them giving up a goal in the first shot yet again.
Yeah, it was like the Cam Talbot special.
Yeah, goal in the first shot 30 seconds in. And it was like, that wasn't even an exaggeration. He was like, the team was doing that every other game for a bit. And it's back.
You know how we joked a while ago about like Dallas needing to put a goal up on the board because they were scoring like a minute into every game?
Yeah.
It was like, the Oilers had to put like a goal up for the visiting team or the other team every game because they'd pretty much give it up anyway. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, the other thing I wanted to mention is like when I saw this this whole like Babcock thing with like Friedman talking about it, I immediately thought of you and I was like, oh man. Like, Sean is going to fucking hate this.
I saw that and my blood was boiling. I would be personally so pissed off if Mike Babcock came in to coach the Oilers.
Yeah.
I do not want him to coach that team. And I have to hope that, whatever, McDavid's got a lot of sway in that organization and locker room that, I really hope that he would not let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Boudreau would have been a great guy to bring in. Like, he would have done insane in Edmonton. Like, see what he's doing with, like, the talent in Vancouver and, like, the, perceived, like, lack of defense. And it's like...
Yeah. I can't remember if we talked about this on an episode or if it was just off air, but, the comparisons between this kind of build-up of composition of Oilers roster versus what Boudreau coached in Washington. There being a lot of similarities there and looking what Bouchard got out of that Washington team. They never made it farther than playoffs, but they're still good.
Yeah, I mean, they made it, and they won some series. They didn't get past the second round, obviously. That was the Capitals' bane. But, like, they had a lot of faults, but, like, they won games. They won a lot of games. But, yeah, I mean, like, you watch, like, some of the moves that the Oilers do with, like, line combos and stuff, and, like, who's out there for power plays and everything. It's just like, what the hell? You've got like the best player in the league, and you're like doing all this weird like head games type shit, and I don't know, it just
they
seems
absolutely bizarre. The coaching staff absolutely insist on putting Devin Shore and Kyle Turris as high up in the lineup as possible when they have Ryan McLeod, who's having like an amazing stretch of games. He had his best game of his career against the Devils over this past weekend, but he had like 8 minutes of ice time because it keeps going to Perlini, Sevier, Kyle Turris, Devin Shore. And it's the same thing we see with all of these younger players. They get like 6 minutes of ice time. How long did it take Evan Bouchard to get a spot in the lineup? Samorukov has, Dmitry Samorukov made his debut last week. He didn't play great in that debut. He gave up, he's basically directly responsible for 2 goals in his first few shifts. But he's playing his first game. He gets paired with Evan Bouchard instead of whatever veteran they had in the lineup that game. And he plays 4 shifts and then gets benched and then sent down immediately after. So it's like, what, if Duncan Keith made those same mistakes, he'd still get 20 minutes of ice time.
Yeah.
It's just that it's that whatever, like, you got to earn your ice time, that is just completely misapplied and not applied fairly across all players.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of coaches of that generation, is just not wanting to trust your young players or let them grow, and sheltering them a lot. And I mean, sometimes they do need sheltering, but like,
it's also a difference between sheltering and just straight up not giving them a chance.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, like, something's got to shake up here in Edmonton, because it's just like the hot and cold team. It's just bizarro. It's I mean, like, Florida is kind of going through a similar thing, but I think they're not quite as dramatic about it. But they had a really hot start to the season, and they've fallen off quite a bit too.
Even at that, they're still 6-3-1 in their last 10.
Yeah, but like they definitely aren't at the top as where they were, but like, they're such a hot and cold team, and the Oilers seem like that way too.
So as I'm sitting here trashing Tippett for not giving McLeod ice time, he goes and scores a goal.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, like, it's like we talked about this with the Islanders, right? Where it's like, how long do you let it go? Like, I don't know if Tippett's seat is really that hot right now. No. If they miss playoffs, it's like he's instantly fired. But
I don't think so either. I don't think it's the right move. Ultimately, it sucks, and he makes a lot of questionable decisions with his lineup and his player utilization. But at a certain point, you can't keep making changes, because there's never going to be that stability that you need to bring everyone together. Like, there's no chemistry in the bottom 6 of forwards, because they keep getting turned over every single year. They keep getting line blendered every other shift. It's like, of course, there's not going to be much production from those lines, because they don't know how to play with each other. It kind of comes the same with a coach. I think, was it Taylor Hall talking about at a certain point with another new coach? You just keep doing your thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think that they make a change unless they miss playoffs. Because if you make a change, it's not guaranteed to be better.
Yeah. And I mean, as we're sitting right now, they are still in a playoff spot by a point.
They're wild card 2, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they, there's time to turn it around, but they've got to start winning some games here.
Yeah. You can't go 2-6-2 in your last 10 and whatever, giving up the first goal every single game.
Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity to gripe about the Capitals for a quick second. Their power play has been just terrible. I think they've been like something like 1 for like 23 or something like that. And they're like the bottom face-off team in the league. And if they get to overtime, they're basically losing.
Yeah,
like,
so it's one of those.
It's like they're winning games and they're doing good, but man, they suck in overtime.
They're still like first in the league.
I know, but
it's crazy.
I know, but it's still frustrating that they're to think about how much better they could be. And a part of it I know is because they've had a lot of players that have been out, and their power play has been like, like Oshie and Backstrom were out the last game due to non-COVID illness.
But such an amazing thing too is, like you mentioned, their lineup and like all the different rookies they're using, all the different depth players that they're having to push way out the lineup, and they're still winning and they're still doing well. Yeah,
it's like Ovechkin and Kuznetsov were like willing this team to win early in the season, and like their goaltending's been okay, not like amazing, but they've I don't know. It's just, I mean, like they're my favorite team, and part of me gets upset when they do this stupid shit, but they are doing very well, and I have to remember that. But part of me thinks that they're just overperforming, and the bottom's gonna fall out. Like you see how they play in overtime, and it's like, come on, like they've got 8 overtime losses already. Like, they're on their way to be this season's Dallas.
Luckily, they have a huge cushion on a playoff spot, even the wild card spots, because there's a massive drop off into the second wild card spot in the East, where it goes from Pittsburgh's got the first one with 41 points, and then Boston's got the second wild card spot with 34 points. So there's a huge cushion there, even if they have a really bad stretch where they should still be comfortably in a spot.
Yeah, and just Washington, just props to Ovechkin. He secured all-time power play goal leader in the NHL. Pretty impressive. And then, we can't talk Washington without talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Welcome back, Brian Rust and Evan Rodriguez. Holy shit. Both of them had a hat trick in the last game.
That
Coming
was
back.
I think I saw the first time that 2 Penguins had a hat trick in the same game since like Peter Sikora and Pascal Dupuis or something, like in 2009. Oddly enough, the 2 players, Rodriguez and Rust, had the same jersey numbers as those 2 as well. Both 9
really?
and 17. Yeah.
Man, hockey is so
Apparently.
funny like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is that's really cool. Super, super impressive to see that. Just like dueling hat tricks within the same team. It's insane. So props to them. And they desperately needed them back in the lineup with some of the COVID issues that they've been having. But yeah, I mean, like that fall off in the Metro is pretty significant. We'll see how the Islanders how they do, because they've got a few games in hand, but like you got to win those. So they seem to found their scoring touch a little bit lately. So maybe they'll jump up.
Yeah, 5-2-3 in their last 10. So that's significantly better than their 10-12-6 record. Pardon me, on the season total. Yeah.
So they might start to climb a little bit.
So we'll jumping back over to the Oilers coaching situation. We'd be missing out on discussion if we didn't talk about if Dave Tippett were fired, who would be out there to replace him. So
Babcock.
I looked into it. Okay, I'm gonna end the episode there. So looked at a couple of names. I mean, obviously we have Paul Maurice, who's available now. Who knows if he wants a job yet? He'd definitely be like an after the season swap in. But he's just a long-time coach who seems to be well respected and well liked. He didn't have the right voice for Winnipeg's dressing room, as we learned. But maybe a fresh start with a new organization would give him a bit new strategies or something that would work better. down in the AHL, the Oilers have Jay Woodcroft as their head coach for the Bakersfield Condors. He's done a fantastic job, him and his staff, of developing a bunch of the prospects and younger players that have been pushing their way up the lineup over the last few seasons. So that he's like an immediate internal look. He's been an assistant for the Oilers in the past when Todd McClellan was there. The concern would be that when he was in Edmonton as the assistant, he was in charge of special teams, I think the power play specifically. And this is the year that it was like league worst. Somehow when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, it was like the league worst power play. So the concern would be that he just isn't an NHL coach, but he's great in the AHL with all the prospects and developing players. And the other name that's out there, I mean, Claude Julien would be an interesting one. When he was with Montreal last season, at the point he got fired, he had the Habs at like the best 5v5 play in the league. Even though Montreal had way more depth and structurally sound forwards than Edmonton. But the 5v5 play is the one area where Edmonton really struggles, where their goal differential at 5v5 is terrible compared to where they are in the standings and compared to their special teams. So, and it's a similar thing with like those possession metrics and shot generation and suppression stuff, where they give up a lot of high quality chances. They give up a lot of 5-on-5 chances. So if someone like Julien, who's had success at doing that type of thing, in Boston and in Montreal, comes into Edmonton, and maybe he can actually teach, the offensively minded players how to add a defensive soundness to their game without sacrificing or compromising their ability to produce.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting candidates available right now for head coach. Like, I was watching the Winter Classic game, and they were talking about like how Jim Montgomery was an assistant for the St. Louis Blues. I had no idea he was actually still working in the game, but
I think he quietly got back into the NHL.
Yeah, they probably like did it, but like didn't let the banners fly and like let the bells ring out when he was hired. But like he was pretty successful in Dallas. So before he was fired for his his personal issues he was going through. But I think there's a lot of guys kind of like that who are like quietly in the league and kind of ready, like available for like another head coaching job. So I don't know. I mean, like the big one when the Canucks fired Green was Boudreau, to me, and then Torts and guys that are like probably not going to get hired again, like Babs. But I think there's a lot of like people ready to make the jump who might have a little bit of experience already, and like kind of to jump off that whole Edmonton coach situation. But the Canucks, Stan Smeel said like they're looking to get a general manager for someone who is ready to make that jump, and it looks like the Canadians are trying to do the same thing, where like they're trying to target those people who are ready to step into a bigger role. And it's interesting because I don't remember ever really hearing that so much as we are right now. Like usually they're like, we want someone with experience who's proven and blah blah blah. And it's interesting to see teams being like, no, we want someone who's got a fresh take.
That's totally a thing. I mean, we're starting to see in more front office positions, like behind the scenes ones, bringing in a lot of younger, more less involved people, less people who aren't like specifically in the industry for 50 years before they get anything. Especially with like the analytics movement, you're getting a lot more younger, fresher ideas in the rooms and stuff, which is great because you're really limiting yourself if you're only hiring recycled people from other organizations, and you're not opening the doors to other people, to people with different backgrounds or different specialties who might be just as qualified or just as capable of doing that job. They just don't get a chance because they don't have the right, people that they've worked with in the past in the same league.
Yeah, exactly.
And specifically for Vancouver and Montreal, being able to do that when they have someone like Jim Rutherford in the president role or Jeff Gorton in the president role, like people who are able to like bring someone in under their wing a bit, train them up, They might not be like fully autonomous GM immediately, but they're going to work with the president. They're going to work with these experienced people to kind of get them used to the flow of that position in the NHL, and then they have their fresh ideas in with the training from the other person.
Yeah, just don't just throw them into the deep end. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I honestly don't think the Oilers are gonna make a change there unless the season keeps going how it's going. Like at some point, they've got to start winning games. Like there's too much talent on the top end there to not. But I don't know. Like there's a world where they do fire him, and I don't know what that looks like. But there is a lot of interesting candidates out there for head coach, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that might not fit very well. So if that happens, there'll be a lot of conversations between you and I think about who inherits that job. But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like other than the Oilers right now, are there any other teams out there where you think that coaches feeling the pressure? Because nothing really comes to mind for me.
I think all of the teams that needed to make a coaching change had done so in the offseason or have already done so this season. The exception being the Islanders, but we were kind of unsure if they would even make that step anyways. But every other team, I mean, like Dallas has sort of leveled off again, and they're 6 points out of a playoff spot right now. But you don't get the sense that there's a lot of pressure or anything within that organization to make a move.
Yeah.
Because they've also had a lot of players out of the lineup recently, I believe.
Yeah, I think they have released like 12 players from protocol today or something like that. There's been a lot of people missing games, and they've had a lot of postponed games too. So
it's hard to get your rhythm, keep your rhythm when you've got people in and out of the lineup and it's only playing once a week or something.
Yeah, and for them, like should mention too, like Ben Bishop announced his retirement going back a while now, but hell of a career for him, but sad way to go out, getting absolutely blown out in the AHL because his body's given up on him. But like their goalie situation has gotten a bit more sustainable. It looks like they're kind of running with like Holtby and Ottinger with Hudobin in the minors, trying to get trade bait going a little bit for him. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't think there's any other teams that are really going to be making a move. I didn't really expect Paul Maurice to resign, but obviously
I didn't think that would happen during the season. I mean, I had pegged him on a hot seat, but that was after the season if Winnipeg hadn't done anything. But for him to make that decision on his own, from the sounds of it, like it was all him. There wasn't really any pressure to get him to resign or anything. It was just, I think I've lost the room, basically.
Yeah, they need a fresh voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess talking about coaches on the move and then players on the move. So you mentioned to me that kind of the big guy who's looking to move right now perhaps is Jakob Chychrun out of Arizona, and I think he's been kind of, I don't know, highlighted as someone who might be available all season.
So there's been a lot of talk around him being trade bait as Arizona looks to make the NHL draft next season their own when they have every single draft pick available. Elliot Friedman said, Elliot Friedman said that he expects Chychrun to be like the first big name to move in 2022. That it might not be at the trade deadline, it might be sooner, but he expects Chychrun to be the first one. And of course, Arizona's looking for picks and prospects. So first, I wanted to see what you thought of Chychrun as a player. Like, we know he had that amazing season last year, but this year he hasn't been as good at all, and he's been hurt for a little bit as well. Do you buy him at how he was last season, or do you kind of pass over because he isn't doing as well this year?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's definitely kind of a tale of two Chychrun's, because last season he looked like to be the number one guy. He took over from OEL. I think he might have led the team in points, if I'm not mistaken, or very close to it. Because he had like 41 points in 56 games, which is insane as a defenseman. A lot of power play points there, 14 power play points.
Second to Phil Kessel, who had 43 last season.
Yeah, 18 goals though as a defenseman too.
That's
in 56
insane.
games. That's pretty impressive.
So good.
He was shooting at 10.2%, which is career high. But in this season, 7 points in 26 games, minus 29. Although OEL was still there, he was still playing big minutes for Arizona. Now Chychrun's that guy. And this season, it kind of looks like Shane Gostisbehere is their points guy. He's been a kind of a nice silver lining for their season.
Yeah, it's amazing that Philly traded him and draft picks for nothing to get rid of him, and now Gostisbehere is like one of the Coyotes' best defenders.
Yeah, it's insane. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like you could probably get him for cheaper than you could last season. And I think I don't know. I mean, like I think a team like Boston really comes to mind for me, for a team that would like a guy like him. I do like Chychrun, but I haven't watched a lot of Arizona games this season because why would anybody watch Arizona games unless your team is playing them? But yeah, I mean, like, I think the one mark against him maybe is that he's not right-handed. Like, if he was right-handed, I think he'd get scooped up almost instantly, and people would pay a huge premium for him. But since he's lefty, I don't know. I mean, I could really see
kind of like a dime a dozen.
Yeah, like he's a good player. He's got he's good size. He works the blue line really well. Is capable of putting up points on a team that doesn't have a lot of high scorers. So with a team like Boston, with Bergeron, Pasternak, Brad Marchand, maybe he'd do better. I mean, like Boston traded for Mike Riley last year, and he really looked good for them, but he wasn't a point guy. But yeah, I mean, like I don't know. I feel like someone's probably going to overpay for him.
Absolutely. It's the only way with trade deadline acquisitions or things like that.
But yeah, I mean, like, Boston.
I think one of the teams that I saw that is like really going to be interested is Florida.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good fit for them. I think like Florida's in a position to make a deal like that, where they have a whole bunch. They have like all their draft picks. I think they have a decent amount of prospects to fill that up. But they also are going to want some defensive depth past Ekblad and Weegar on the top pair. If they can get like a second pairing of Chychrun and Gudas or something like that, just to shore up that depth on the second pairing, it takes the pressure off of Chychrun so he can produce like he did last season, hopefully. And it just gives the Panthers a bit more defensive depth as they seem to be in a real position to compete this year. Given how good they've been, given how good everyone's playing, like they've got Huberdeau on an absolute tear this season. It might be that time where they go all in.
Yeah, I mean, like their left side depth is I mean, I guess Ekblad and Weegar are both righties, but they play together, right? On the right side, they've got Gudas, Montour. So does Montour play second pairing? I think I don't know. That guy seems to be really streaky, as far as points. But yeah, I could see Florida. Talking about Montour, Florida really going after him because they seem to be going all in, and like they really need to win a playoff series here.
Showing daily faceoff is showing Weegar and Ekblad on the top pair, then Forsling and Gudas on the second.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So if they can push Forsling down to the third pair and put Chychrun in with Gudas or something, gives them a second power play option. I mean, a third power play option, I guess I should say. and just so much more depth and versatility with those defenders in the middle of the lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we just talked about them, but like the Jets, I think might be an interesting location for him to land. I mean, we talked about how they finally got defensemen, and it worked out for them. But I mean, like, Chychrun would make their blue line even better, I think. I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams that would want in on him, and I think there could be a real, almost a bidding war if if they play it right. But he's not playing exceptionally well points wise, but maybe he's playing well defensively. Although he is like minus 29, but it's Arizona, so they I don't know.
Yeah, we might have to. That'd be one where the stats you got to do some eye test stuff to see what he's actually doing.
And I'm sure there's lots of guys in, Arizona games, like scouts, just reporting back on everybody in that lineup.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But yeah, are there any other locations you could see him landing?
Vegas.
Oh, God, no.
Because why not? Because Vegas gets like everybody. They're always in on everybody and somehow always manage to find a way to pull it off. So, of course, Chychrun's going to go to Vegas.
Well, it's interesting in Vegas because Martinez has been on IR like almost the entire season. And it keeps like seeming like he's never going to come back. So I wonder if they do go for him. I wonder how many years does Chychrun have left on his deal? He's at 4.6 and he is signed until
he's got 3 more seasons after this one. So this isn't just a rental situation. So the return might end up being higher than anticipated just because they're going to have him for a few more years.
Yeah, like that's a pretty decent cap hit, but
totally
I
is.
guess you're banking on him fitting more into your team.
Yeah. One other team I was thinking of, you would be able to comment on this better, is the Capitals. Where they could totally swing, like a Kempny or Jensen and a pick and a prospect, and be pretty close to the cap, and still fit him in. And their defensive lineup looks a little bit questionable this season. It'd be probably nice for them because they're doing so well to give one last shot for the core as they are right now.
Yeah, the Capitals' defense is very interesting right now because, like you mentioned, Kempny, he made his season debut. He's playing in the AHL. His legs are like bionic at this point. He hasn't looked great with the whole taxi squad thing. He's been playing. They brought up like Lucas Johansson to play. He got his debut. They let Alexiev get his debut as well. But other than that, they've kind of been rolling the same guys all season with like Carlson, Jensen, Orlov, Schultz, TVR, and Fehervary. Matt Irwin's played a couple games here and there. But like that 6 looked solid to me. They've had a lot of injuries though. So yeah, I mean, like if they could get a better guy in there, it would be interesting, but like I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think I see their need being in the front end more than anywhere else, or a goalie.
That's true.
Although like the Capitals go after a defenseman almost every single like trade deadline. I think last year was like the first time that they didn't in a long time. So they could do it. Like I'm not putting it past them because like they usually get D-men at the deadline. It was like an ongoing joke every single season. So yeah, I mean, like I think Kempny and Jensen are both deadline guys for them. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of teams that potentially want him. That are kind of like not quite secured in playoffs, but want that, that extra defender in their lineup to kind of push them over the edge. There's a lot of races. I think there's a lot of teams that are kind of underperforming too. So I honestly could see him going to like anybody in those like 4, 5, 6 spots in each division, just to kind of just take that extra step.
Yeah, like he might not be the prime target in terms of, trade deadline rental, but he's kind of like a middle range guy just to kind of help secure a team in a playoff spot rather than, first in the division going all the way type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Washington kind of trying to get their last jump in at it, but like what about like Pittsburgh? Like they could
they're
do
always
the same
pretty
thing.
active.
Yeah. Or Calgary, they've kind of dropped off a little bit. But they're still up there in the Pacific. So do they bring in an extra defenseman? Do they think that's going to put them over the edge to keep that spot? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, is there any other players out there that you think are like huge trade bait? Anybody else on Arizona or like I don't know,
the other
Seattle
big name
maybe?
I keep hearing is Ben Sherratt. I've also heard Giordano's name now that you mentioned Seattle, but Ben Sherratt's another one who keeps getting looked at as trade bait moving into the next couple of months here, which is kind of an interesting one because he's been pretty good with Montreal. Not great this season, but then again, the whole team kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But, he's kind of like a big physical guy who can actually produce a bit offensively in his little spurts of offense. I feel like he's going to be one that a team really overpays for and gives up way too much for. He's kind of a prime target for that. And, but his name, like Mark Giordano, I've heard, people inquiring about him. He's a great target for that too, where he's just like an experienced veteran to bring in for the trade deadline. Give him one last shot at a cup with a contender or something.
Yeah, that would be tough for Seattle to trade your captain away in the first season.
Yeah.
But they would probably do it if they got the right stuff for him. But yeah, Ben Sherratt, like we saw him in playoffs, like he was like that trident or whatever they were talking about of like the big three for Montreal of like Weber, Sherratt, and Petrie. And Sherratt's definitely, I think, like he's still probably playing his game in Montreal. Like Petrie's fallen off an entire cliff and he's hurt, but Sherratt's like that. You mentioned he's like that big physical guy, and if he chips in offense, great. If he doesn't, whatever. He's not there for that. So yeah, I mean, like going into playoffs, he was matched up against some of the toughest matchups. So I could see a team wanting to bring him in to add that kind of physical presence to their blue line. Like Washington again, right? Like teams like that. Even like Colorado bringing an extra guy, like they're pretty stacked on defense, but like a lot of their young guys keep getting hurt. They bring in another big physical guy, so that in playoffs you can, take the brunt of those forechecks and everything. Winnipeg, send him back to Winnipeg, to that franchise.
Full circle.
Yeah, I mean he was drafted by Atlanta, so go back. Yeah, but I think like that you're right in saying like that's the type of player that teams will overpay for because it's just the price they put on making playoffs.
Yeah, that appeal of the price on making the playoffs and the appeal of a playoff style player. Big, physical, like it's the qualities of playoff hockey that teams are gonna look really closely at for the trade deadline.
Yeah, and if the taxi squad thing sticks around for the rest of the season, I think teams are going to be making all sorts of little moves like that, where it's like, we can keep these guys on our taxi squad, and we don't have to send someone down if we trade for that guy. So why not? Why not bring in some more depth, some NHL quality depth, so that if something happens or someone's test positive and can't play, we've got someone ready to go. Even some of these contenders like might want to bring in more NHL ready guys, even if they don't play a game, like just to have that safety net
Yeah, and
could be worth
exactly.
it.
That's a really good point of wanting an experienced taxi squad if they still have them come playoff time, to just have, so you don't have to roll a lineup of all rookies in the playoffs if you know, you end up losing a couple of players.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I don't think there's any other players that really come to my mind about like who's going to be available.
Nothing yet.
Patrick Kane.
That'll come. That wraps things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate and review this episode and toss a follow or subscribe our way. For more content, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Clappercast Media or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more hockey talk.